When you're in a facility where you can't bath, when you're in a facility where the mattresses are too thin and your back is getting sore after 2 weeks, when you're in a facility where the plugs next to your bed are blown, when you're in a facility where there are flies in the room, when you're in a facility where the food isn't great, and then on top of that, you add the uncaring nature of the doctors, it starts to become very difficult for people to heal. The main reason I left Helen Joseph Hospital was the treatment of the doctors towards me, but even more than that, the treatment that I saw the doctors giving other patients around me. But when this guy died, they went to his body and more flies came through the window. So we're talking hundreds of flies that were crawling over this guy's body for hours. And then they started flying around the room and landing on me and the other patients. And so all of a sudden I had flies on me, crawling on my skin that had just come from this dead guy, crawling on my drinking glass. And I thought, you know what?
In the 14 days that you were at the Helen Joseph facility, what would be your review if you were to give a score to this I Serve with a Smile campaign that the department says is in operation in terms of the experience of clinical care?
I'd just like to clear up a few misconceptions, things that I haven't alleged and haven't said. I've never criticized the nursing staff at Helen Joseph Hospital. My experience of the nursing staff is when you get there, they're a little frosty towards you. But when people see that you respect them and they respect you, after a few days, you develop a good relationship with the nurses, and they're really helpful. In fact, I think it's the nurses that hold the hospital together. That's number one. I never criticized the nurses. Number two, I never said I didn't get the correct clinical care at Helen Joseph. I believe that I was getting the correct clinical care. So those are the two things that have been put into the story that I just haven't said.
Yeah.
And although I did take some pictures of the infrastructure problems were not my criticism.
Yes.
They were not the reason I left.
Yeah.
The main reason I left Helen Joseph Hospital was the treatment of the doctors towards me, but even more than that, the treatment that I saw the doctors giving other patients around me.
Yes.
And after almost 2 weeks of watching people being treated really badly, without dignity, without kindness, without care, it was one of the things that precipitated me making the video, being so angry, and also signing myself out. There were two more things that contributed to me deciding I wanted to leave. One was the night before I left, I'd just fallen asleep on a bed similar to this one, and I had my cell phone next to my head, which is how most of us in the ward were sleeping, with our phones close by, so that we didn't lose sight of them. And someone from another ward came in while I was sleeping and stole my cell phone from my bed next to my head. And the guy in the bed opposite me was kind of asleep, but he thought he saw someone take my phone. And he said, "Tommy," and I said, "Yes." He said, "Have you got your phone?" I said, "No." He said, "Some short woman just took it." And I jumped out of bed immediately and I started shouting to security and nurses, "They must look for a short woman. She's stolen my phone." What I didn't know, she was a patient from 4 wards down. She was already back in her bed. But one of the guys from my ward picked up his phone and dialed my number. And there happened to be a nurse next to her bed at the time who heard my phone vibrating. She was trying to switch it off and take the SIM card out under the blanket. And I managed to get my phone back. But I started worrying about my safety. I didn't know if I wanted to close my eyes at night. And then the final straw for me was, there was a gentleman in a bed diagonally opposite me who was terminal. He had liver failure and he was going to die. I knew he was going to die. Excuse me. He didn't die because of Helen Joseph. He died because of his own actions. But the morning that I decided to leave, the Saturday morning, he died at about 6 o'clock in the morning. And then there was about an hour and a half period or so where doctors came running and tried to revive him, which I thought was really weird because they were the ones that said he was terminal and was going to die. And then it looked like a Hollywood ER show while they tried to revive this guy, and there was no ways they were ever going to get that right. And they were the ones that said he was going to die anyway. Anyway, they didn't revive him, and he passed on. And then his body was left there for hours.
Yeah.
And for my time in Ward 8, there were a collection of flies that fly around the ceiling. They're there all day. Maybe there are 100 of them or so inside the room, but they don't bug you because they don't come down to bed level. But you're conscious of them 3 meters up or so, you know. And I didn't have a problem with them because they never came near me. And I also didn't want anyone to spray doom or something because I can't breathe properly. So I had no problem with these flies. But when this guy died, they went to his body and more flies came through the window. So we're talking hundreds of flies that were crawling over this guy's body for hours. And then they started flying around the room and landing on me and the other patients. And so all of a sudden I had flies on me, crawling on my skin that had just come from this dead guy, crawling on my drinking glass. And I thought, you know what? I can't handle the treatment that the doctors give us. I don't mean clinical treatment. So I mean the way they treat you as a human being.
Yes.
I don't just mean me. I mean the people I saw around me too.
Yeah.
I'm scared to close my eyes in this hospital now. And I don't want to have a dead man's flies on me.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to get out of here. And that's when I was angry enough to make the video. And that's when I RHT'd and I refused treatments and I left. Yes, I
I want to circle to this issue of the doctors, because when we asked the department said, no, part of what they are doing, one, is to train doctors on communication skills. They use what they call an IDET model of communication. So they say the doctors must identify themselves, even the nurses, everybody, identify yourself, be polite, tell them exactly what the procedures are and so on and so forth. Do they do that? Is that the model that is being used?
No, I'd say the majority of them haven't been doing that. I don't know why. Maybe they're overworked. Maybe they're unhappy with their jobs. Maybe there's a new generation of doctors who aren't being trained the same. I'm not sure. But you can see doctors walk up to people and not introduce themselves. The first question they might ask is, have you had bloods drawn today? I've seen patients say, doctor, I'm in pain, receive no medication or explanation why they're not getting pain medication. The guy who'd passed away in the bed, diagonally opposite me, 2 days before he died, he had a lumbar puncture procedure where they stick needles in your spine. There were 5 doctors around his bed. And of course, they were restraining him because he didn't want to have this procedure. They were holding him. And he was screaming like an animal throughout this procedure. It was probably 10 minutes or so. And while the doctors were doing the procedure, they were discussing their bonuses. They were discussing the cars that they drove. And they were discussing restaurants in the areas that were good to eat at. And I thought that was totally inappropriate. And the more I watched this behavior from the doctors, I wondered why people in a profession where you take an oath to be compassionate and kind weren't showing the patients compassion and kindness. Now, there's been a lot of criticism leveled at me over the last few days that I criticized the clinical care. I've never criticized the clinical care. The department's right that I was being treated clinically and I was being treated properly. But I wasn't being treated with respect, and neither were the people around me. And a lot of people have said that I've been nitpicking. But the interesting thing is that the dean of the Faculty of Medicine, the head of medicine at Wits University, today issued a circular to all students and staff, reminding them that they need to start acting compassionately towards patients, and reminding them of the oath they took, and asking them to report anybody that they work with who's not giving compassion, care, and kindness. In fact, the dean of Wits Faculty of Medicine went so far as to say that they need to treat the patients as if it was their own family coming in for treatment. And I feel I've been vindicated. Number one, by that actually Wits has had to remind their students and staff that they need to treat patients with dignity. But more than that, the videos that I've made, if you look underneath those videos at the thousands of comments from South Africans from all walks of life, you will find stories exactly like mine where people said they've been disrespected by the doctors in our healthcare institutions. And that's why I spoke up. I spoke up because I thought that our doctors needed a wake-up call, that they need to start treating patients with dignity, not like we hobos off the street, not like we cockroaches or animals. People can't afford medical aid, so you're subhuman. I think that that's totally wrong. And a lot of people are scared to speak up. A lot of people are scared that if they speak, medical treatment will be withheld or they'll get into trouble. And I thought, I'm going to speak up and get out of here. I've faced so much flack in the last day. I've now been called an agent. I've been called a spy. I've been called a proxy for political parties that want to destroy the NHI. None of that is true.
Yeah.
And I understood finally what it's like when you speak truth to power.
We'll circle to that particular matter. Let's talk about Ward 8. I mean, the other claim that we heard yesterday in our conversation was that Mr. London, yes, could have seen a pipe or two that would have been burst and no water coming out, and maybe the ceiling that needs to be repainted and whatnot. But the ward is habitable, not to the standards maybe of Morningside, but habitable.
I agree. It is habitable. And I didn't have a problem with the peeling paint. I didn't have the problem that we weren't able to bath. We washed with bowls at 4 o'clock every morning. I mean, I didn't enjoy sleeping on a mattress that was so thin that I was on springs, but it was better than sleeping on the floor. And I understood that I'm in a healthcare facility that is strained, that is at capacity. And so, although I took a few pictures of it, that was not my complaint. You know, but here's the problem, okay? When you're in a facility where you can't bath, when you're in a facility where the mattresses are too thin and your back is getting sore after 2 weeks, when you're in a facility where the plugs next to your bed are blown, when you're in a facility where there are flies in the room, when you're in a facility where the food isn't great, and then on top of that, you add the uncaring nature of the doctors, it starts to become very difficult for people to heal physically and emotionally. And so I don't exclude the infrastructure problems, but that wasn't something that I was ever going to say I can't live in this environment. But I can't live in that environment and get bad treatment by the people who are supposed to be decent towards me.
Right. I mean, and unfortunately, you've been called an agent anti-NHI, but one of the speakers said, well, Mr. London should actually then, because of that experience, be the one who is an advocate for NHI to bring equity into the system, because it exposes, again, a system that is carrying 80% of the load, they say, with 20% of the budget.
So firstly, I'm a socialist/capitalist. I believe we should have a healthcare system in this country that anyone can walk into any hospital and get treatment. The concept of the NHI is not something that I'm against. The concept of healthcare for all of us is something that I'm in favor of. But the very same people who are going to create an NHI are the people who are running our institutions at the moment, and they substandard. So I question how the NHI is going to be so much better when it's the very same people who are going to run it. And so, you know, I'm worried that we've got this habit in this country that when there's a crack in the wall, then we put some wallpaper over it. And I'll give you an example. For years, we've been seeing posters with Batupile on the walls, people first. Well, it hasn't worked. When you go into a police station, you don't feel like the police officer has got that attitude of Batupile, people first. You don't feel it inside a clinic, or you don't feel it inside a hospital. So why didn't we get Batupile right? Instead, we're going to push that aside, and we call him this new campaign, Service with a Smile, or whatever it might be. Well, I challenge you to ask your viewers to call in and say, and ask them whether they do get service with a smile inside Helen Joseph and hospitals. I guarantee you that the majority of South Africans are going to say that they don't get service with a smile. And for me, that's just putting wallpaper over the Batupile crack that didn't work. Yes. And when the new one doesn't work, they're going to come up with a new campaign in 5 years and put some new wallpaper over it. Yes. And I worry that the NHI is another layer of wallpaper over a system that is dysfunctional. Yeah. I'm not against the concept of an NHI. In fact, I'm in favor of it.
Yeah, really harsh, guys. These are the kind of videos that diasporan South Africans would watch and feel like probably I made the right decision to leave the country. I'm not criticizing South Africa. My country, Nigeria, has this problem with infrastructure. Many African countries, especially in the healthcare. And it appears that the private institutions are better at managing these facilities, but then they come at a cost. And for some reason, Africans need to stand up and start demanding good governance and management of infrastructure. So we Africans will need to really start demanding more from our government to really put down much more concentration and focus on investing in public infrastructure for the common man. So anyway, Tom London actually went viral after he posted this video. Let's take a quick watch.
Investigations are underway by the Gauteng Health Department. This in response to a viral video posted by a patient at Helen Joseph Hospital, Tom London. London's video shows non-functioning medical equipment and poor infrastructure with ceilings peeling. He also describes the poor state of communication between doctors and patients and occasions where patients spend long hours unattended. Now, the department has issued a statement detailing a provincial campaign they initiated 9 months ago called I Serve with a Smile. Now, it says this aims to improve staff attitudes and patients' experiences of care.
Our government wants us to believe that the NHI is going to do great things for us. But here's just a few minutes in the day in the life of the Helen Joseph Circus Hospital, where the doctors talk about their cars and their clothes and their bonuses while people lie dying in front of them. When the doctors left the ward now, after this guy just died, they were laughing. Shame on you. Shame on you, Helen Joseph Hospital, but mostly shame on the doctors that think they have the right to call themselves doctors, that run around this hospital and treat every single patient like a cockroach. You, doctors, you're the cockroaches. You actually don't deserve to exist. Not the patients you're busy experimenting on and killing. Please share this video so people can see the state of South African healthcare. If this is what the NHI is, make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and it appears that, I've actually just started doing my research. It appears that, Tom London, it actually says that he's a South African talk show host, right? And he actually, he's really familiar to many South Africans. His voice is actually really familiar to many South Africans. And this is one of the reasons this video went viral, because, it speaks about how he has a really passionate approach to storytelling and, he's captivating. And so we could see a lot of that in his reporting here on how he brought to public on social media this issue of, this terrible state of this hospital here. So it's really sad anyway. What he actually argues, for the report here says that he had a problem that began as a simple chest cold, but then it escalated into a life-threatening condition. Something like, it's been argued that, he's been battling now with pneumonia and he couldn't breathe. He had a massive pleural effusion. And so over a liter of fluid was, stuck in his lung cavity. And so he had to really sought help from this hospital because it was a really terrible state he found himself. And so to have this treatment from the doctors and, the state of the hospital was quite shocking. And I think it would really be nice for us to really watch the extended video so we understand the context from which Tom London comes from, in all of his complaints. The video that actually inspired this interview that has really shaken South Africa now. Let's just quickly take a watch on that and watch till the end, because there's another video on here where he speaks about the treatment of South African doctors, and one can easily imagine what could happen, especially in terms of the implications of the NHI bill that is really being pushed now by the Ministry of Health and all that, and what ramifications that would have for the common South African if the state of infrastructure and healthcare isn't this way. Let's just listen quickly to Tom London. Really powerful set of videos, and I'll catch you at the end of this.
I'm doing this video a little earlier than I thought because of what's going on in the ward at the moment. So welcome to the Helen Joseph Circus Hospital. This is these are the bathroom facilities for Ward 8. There's the bath. There is a cold tap which works, but no one baths here. Here I don't know what that door means or where it's supposed to go. Your basins. These are the toilets you get to choose from. You get to choose from toilet 1 or toilet 2, which is a bit better this morning. There's the toilet paper. I was rushed here on the 25th because I had pneumonia. Went to my GP, treated me. Treatment didn't work. And as my antibiotics ended, I went into respiratory distress on the 26th, Sunday morning. I was rushed to this hospital where I landed up in casualty. I slept in casualty for 3 days. There were no beds. I had no pillow, I had no blanket. I think on the second night a nurse brought me a blanket. I lost control of my bowels. There were no bathroom facilities, so I lay in my own feces for a day before I kicked up such a fuss that they moved me to Ward 8. I then got a doctor who never introduced herself to me, had very little to say to me, and then a few days later told me that she was being rotated to another hospital. That's when I received Dr. Pillay and Dr. Van Eck, who I believe they've treated me quite nicely. But I've been watching the treatment by the other doctors. The gentleman in the bed diagonally opposite me, who is he's crashing at the moment. 2 days ago, a team of young doctors, 5 doctors, came to do a lumbar puncture on him. Sorry, I'm out of breath, so I'm going to sit on the bath for a while. They came to do a lumbar puncture on him. And while they were sticking needles in him and Australian, while he was screaming like an animal, they were discussing their bonuses. They were discussing their cars, and they were discussing the restaurants nearby that had really great food to eat. They were laughing and joking, while the guy diagonally opposite me was screaming his lungs out. The guy opposite me, he has a doctor who comes in every day and goes, "Did they take your x-rays today?" And he goes, "No." And he goes, "Did they take your blood today?" "No." He doesn't say good morning, nothing. The doctors that run around here, they treat the patients like cockroaches. No doctor, I haven't seen one doctor walk up to a patient in our ward and go, "Good morning, Mr. So-and-so, how are you?" Nothing. They treat the patients with absolute disdain and disrespect. I'm talking about this from the young Wits medical students all the way up the chain at this hospital. I have never seen a level of disrespect for human beings like this in my life. Yesterday I was taken down for a CT scan to check if I've got cancer. I had the CT scan, I was brought back up. A few hours later they came back, said, "Oh, we made a mistake, we forgot to put the dye in you." So I went down and had another CT scan. Now, I've been dealing with my doctors, Dr. Pillay and Dr. Van Eck. Every day they come and report back to me, they tell me what they're doing. Yesterday, a blonde doctor, some young blonde white doctor, she comes to my bed, looks at me, ignores me, starts writing in my file for 10 minutes, says absolutely nothing, and then announces that Dr. Pillay is no longer my doctor, I've got a new doctor. I asked why, and she said that he has handed his patients over to less complicated patients over to someone else. And she gave me the doctor's name, I can't remember. I haven't seen that doctor for 48 hours, so now I haven't had a doctor for 48 hours. Dr. Pillay, I don't know, Brew, you came and spoke to me every day. Just 2 days ago you said we're going to look awkwardly at each other for the next few days until we have your CT scans, and now you've ducked. Someone told me that you're writing exams at the moment. I don't know. Right? The guy opposite me, that doctor that comes every day, treats him with absolute disrespect. He's a human being who, when he talks to this guy who is in constant pain opposite me, he talks to him like this. The guy opposite me goes, "I'm in so much pain, doc." And the doctor goes, "Oh yes?" Just like that. Nothing. No doctor here calls you by name. Every doctor here assumes you're a hobo that's come off the streets. The doctors here are behaving like the patients are their little experiments. I've never, ever experienced anything like this in my life. I'm going to take you into the ward, and I'm not going to say much, but I'm going to show you some of the crap that's going on in this ward. Give me a second. Let's go to the ward. Oh, by the way, I'm lucky to be talking to you on this phone, because last night as I was sleeping, a woman came into the room, took the phone from right next to my head and stole it. Luckily, the guy opposite me saw it, woke me up, said, "Tom, someone's just stolen your phone." I got another guy to call it, and I heard it ringing from down the passage, and I tracked her down to a ward where she was trying to remove the SIM card. So I'm very lucky to be talking to you on this phone. Let's go into Ward 8. The doctors here, you give doctors a bad name. All of you, despicable human beings, right? Here, taps. What, do you think it works? Nah, that tap doesn't work. Let's check the ceilings out. Well, they're peeling and flaking and stuffed, right? All of this is rusted. This is my bed. The plug doesn't work, it's blown. That's all rusted. I am so angry with you. This is the Helen Joseph Circus Hospital, where doctors experiment on you. Now, earlier on, I put a video up of the guy opposite me who was busy dying. I'm going to turn this camera around, right? He's dead. He died 20 minutes ago. He's lying there in that bed. He's actually gone. He's dead. Now, our government wants us to believe that the NHI is going to do great things for us. But here's just a few minutes in the day in the life of the Helen Joseph Circus Hospital, where the doctors talk about their cars and their clothes and their bonuses while people lie dying in front of them. When the doctors left the ward now, after this guy just died, they were laughing. Shame on you. Shame on you, Helen Joseph Hospital, but mostly shame on the doctors that think they have the right to call themselves doctors, that run around this hospital and treat every single patient like a cockroach. You, doctors, you're the cockroaches. You actually don't deserve to exist. Not the patients you're busy experimenting on and killing. Please share this video so people can see the state of South African healthcare. If this is what the NHI is, make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah, so I really don't have much to say. It's quite sad. In my next video anyway, I'll be making a video with the reply from Aaron Motsoaledi, who actually was former Minister of Home Affairs, but now he's now Minister of Healthcare. And, you know, I remember how he criticized in Parliament the criticisms on the NHI budget, the NHI bill's budget, he called it a mathematical hooliganism. It was an irresponsible critique, but it's really sad. We really don't understand how this whole thing goes, but let's keep watching. And I don't know, what do you guys think about Tom London's video here, his speeches, his interview? Share your thoughts on what you think about South Africa's healthcare system in the comments.